Well, should the United States end the Federal Reserve once and for all? Yes, the Fed. It's what Congressman Dr. Ron Paul has been calling for. He says it's the source of all of our problems in the United States. Well, Vice Presidential candidate J.D. Vance was asked this very question the other day, last week, and he said he's not really a Ron Paul guy, but he is now coming around to this idea of ending the Fed. Watch.
I've kind of come around to the Ron Paul argument. I don't fully agree with it, but the criticism of the Federal Reserve that makes the most sense to me is that it gives massive corporations a lower cost of money than the average American.
Well, then Dr. Paul tweeted this message saying, hey, we'd love to talk about it. Let's actually have a conversation, JD. So did that conversation happen? Will we actually end the Fed? Can America recover from this nearly $36 trillion in debt right now? Let's ask former presidential candidate and Congressman Dr. Ron Paul, and one of my personal heroes, by the way. Dr. Paul, welcome back to the show. Great to see you.
Thank you, Clayton. Good to be with you.
So first of all, I just got to ask, did you speak with J.D. Vance? Has he had a conversation, a phone call, or anything with you about this idea of ending the Fed? Has he taken that up with you, or is he a little too busy right now running for vice president?
Actually not, but it's still the little connection that we had was very valuable because I guess there were a lot of people out there who was fascinated with the idea. I was surprised that many people looked at the so-called conversation we had. But no, he did not respond directly to me. But we sent an acknowledgement that we appreciated, what's happening, and we want to follow up because, I think this is where I see openings, when I see people say, well, no, I especially when they say, I wasn't into this, I didn't care that much, but all of a sudden, that's a real encouraging thing. That's not to expect that he will be with us on this issue very quickly, and the political position one holds, depends on exactly how you phrase it. And I think that, it was very, very beneficial, and it exposed this discussion to a lot of people, and I was surprised how many people paid attention, and those who said, yes, Ron should talk to him, so
right.
That's the way it gets started. But 1 week before a major election, maybe they don't want to take any risk, but I
right.
thought it was pretty neat, and I was actually surprised that there was that much attention to it, because I've been used to, over the years, to take it as it comes along, and always figuring there will be new people coming in. And there was a time before I was in Congress, or before I even ran for Congress, I would speak out on the money issue and go to college campuses. I used to think 15 or 20 people, that's pretty good, But
Right.
the impressive thing is, later on, many of them worked for me, and it wasn't as foolish as it seemed at the time. You plant seeds, the way I look at it.
Well, in our live stream, we do the show live every day, and I'll see thousands of comments from people saying, end the Fed, end the Fed. So your message is getting out there. For our audience that maybe doesn't understand what the Federal Reserve does, can you talk about what the Federal Reserve is, and how you've repeatedly said that the Fed makes us poor while funding these endless U.S. wars, whether it's in Afghanistan, whether it's in Iraq, whether it's in Ukraine, whether it's in Israel right now. So what exactly is the Fed, and how is it keeping us in this perpetual state of poverty?
Well, technically called a central bank. The bank is owned by the government, or run by the government. And the argument about the central banks and this kind of power you give to a few people has been going on since the inception of the country, because Hamilton and Jefferson argued over this, and Jefferson said, no way, we shouldn't do this, and Hamilton started the first bank. That didn't last. It was finally finished. They tried the second bank, and Jackson got rid of that. But they have all this power, and even those early one, the first bank that was started by Hamilton, was like the Fed, because they were allowed to hold money, held the government money, but they were allowed to print money too. They fiat money immediately, and it didn't work out quite the way they claim. And so the fuss has been going on a long time, and It's a secret body of people that meet. That even when I was in Congress and a ranking member on the banking committee, I was never permitted to go and know I know what exactly they talk about or how they establish monetary policy. But it's a
That's
gimmick.
crazy.
It's a
That's
gimmick
crazy.
that it's a gimmick that is designed to help their special friends.
It's amazing. You're on the banking committee. You're not allowed to know what they're talking about. So they're unelected. They're unelected, and they drive all of the monetary policy for the United States. It's sickening. And of course, we look now at the national debt of the United States. We owe, $36 trillion. Is there a way that we can recover from this at this point? Is there a way that we could, go cold turkey somehow, return to a gold standard? I mean, are we able to come back from this?
Well, this problem has been around for longer even than the history of our country, because all the way back to the Roman times. But it always ends. It ends badly because a lot of people will be cheated and they'll go bankrupt. But to do it gracefully, like getting more members of Congress to vote it in and gradually just shrink the Fed, no way, it's not going to happen. But why? You say, well, why'd you waste all that time, talking about it? Because it'll end. It's going to end itself. And the big question is, what are you going to replace it with? The Marxists like it because they want chaos. They want excessive spending. They want chaos in the streets. They want these wars to agitate us. And then they will come in with their Marxism that they really want to promote. So that is a very, very strong scheme that we have to overcome. And that effort has been going on for a long time. So I would say that to eliminate it gradually is not going to happen. When it ends, though, that's why we have to have a replacement for it. And there's a lot of good history about it, our early history. They tried it with the continental dollar. They tried it with the national banks early on. And they tried it with the Federal Reserve. But right now, I would say in the last, now it's more like 30, 40 years, there's been a revival of an interest in this. I began to get involved in wanting to speak out more was in 1971 when it was determined that, the Bretton Woods Agreement, where we would back the currency at $35 an ounce for foreigners. We weren't even allowed to own the gold. And we limped along. But in 1971, we wouldn't even honor our commitment to foreigners. So it was a declaration of bankruptcy. And since that time, the problems have developed. Right now, when the Fed took over, gold was $20 an ounce. And that means that the ratio, it isn't so much the price of gold that moves, it's the devaluation of the currency. So when the ratio was $20 to an ounce, then $35 an ounce, and then it was in limbo for a long time. And then it finally got legalized in the 70s. And in 1975, we were once again given the freedom to own gold again, which means that they open up like a big ball opening up. And it went from $35 an ounce all the way back then it went to $800, which was a huge jump. But now it's at $2,700, and it's going to go a lot higher because we live in these dangerous times. I think a couple things have to be looked at. One is you have to have a unit of account. A dollar had been in the early years, in spite of the shortcomings and the bad moves that they were doing, there was a certain weight of silver and a weight of gold, and that kept a check on the size and scope of government. But after World War II, we gained the status, and it was not done by just accident. We gained the status of owning and operating the reserve currency of the world, which means the world was starting to accept our dollar, and we took advantage of that. We became very powerful. It finances our military industrial complex and now the medical industrial complex and on and on. So the bubble is huge, but the system is going to collapse. There are signs now that the alternatives, the people who are claiming trying to plan and take over the dollar's position as a reserve currency. They're getting more active, and that will happen, but probably not next week or next month. But this system is going to end. But we need a definition of the unit of account is the biggest thing, and then we have to deal with the Federal Reserve, because that's a taxing agency. What they do is they counterfeit the money, and they serve the special interests. And so you have the welfare warfare state, and that encourages the growth of government, and that is what the big issue is. But the thing that bothers me, Clayton, is we have this great debate going on about the people in the election, who's the who has the ugliest supporters. So they go on and do this, and they don't talk about the issues that we're talking about right now, because that's the issue. Why is this government so big, and why do we have less liberty? Can we do anything about it? And the answer is that we know exactly how it's caused. We know exactly what has to be done, but the people have to understand it and be willing to do the things that you need to have sound money and get the government out of our lives and out of our wallet and out of other countries.
Now, you bring up a great point, and I think the candidates mostly haven't touched on this issue. Certainly on the Democratic side, on the communist side, the Marxist side, really, they love the expansion of government, as big as we can possibly make the size of this government. On the Trump side, you certainly have had Elon Musk recently, and of course Donald Trump saying that he was going to appoint him as some sort of like slashing of the budget czar inside the government, slashing perhaps $2 trillion out of the government. But on the other hand, you've had Trump praising the fact that he's expanded the size and scope of the U.S. military, and you talk about the military-industrial complex, so it's made all of those people very, very happy. All of the bomb makers and all of the warmongers in Congress and in Washington who love the expansion of the military. So do you think that definitely not Kamala Harris going to shrink the size of government, but do you think that Trump, maybe having Elon Musk in there, is going to actually shrink the size of government and cut the budget?
Probably not. I think the effort is sincere. I think Musk is sincere, but an individual can't do it. The deficit is too big. The debt is too big, and all the mistakes, the malinvestment are too great. So they will self-destruct, and so you have to eliminate that to get growth to work again. And you can do this either way. You can declare bankruptcy, quit the spending, and get rid of the Fed and all that. But the people wouldn't tolerate it. I mean, can you imagine if you say, Rand, my son Rand, he tried to, cut a penny out of the budget, out of everything in the budget, and then a nickel and a dime, and they won't accept anything. And so, because if there's a budget presentation for $1, a dollar on something, they say, well, we want to cut 1 penny out of it. That they won't do that, because by that time the inflationary process says it's not $1 anymore; it's $1.10. So you can't cut anything from $1.10. You have to deal with the monetary policy, because that is the tax, and the tax is. But most people don't realize it, and the Democrats get away with it, and the Republicans who want the wars. That it's deceitful, it's an evil tax, it's put on the average person. The wealthy are not hit, especially in the early parts of the destruction of a currency, and they get away with it because they can get the money first, and they can become very wealthy over it. But eventually, though, the people get higher prices, and the one thing they don't realize is, I've heard it so many times, and this tells you that the educational system of this country is in bad shape. They'll come up and say, well, we have a problem. We know you're sincere and you're trying to help, but I'm going to the grocery store. I don't have enough money to buy my groceries, which is true. And they're suffering the consequence because they were taxed. You say, well, no, we don't really put more taxes on the poor people, the middle class. What we do, take away the value of the currency. So if you and they lie through their teeth about how much the dollar is devaluing, and that's the inflation. So if prices going up 10% or more, that means there has been extraction of purchasing power. So but the people who come to the Congress say we need more money, and they say, well, we better do that. Everybody has to have education. Everybody has to have medical care, and we have to save the world. We have to take care of the poor Ukrainians and the people in the Middle East and everything else. But that means it's inevitable. There's going to be a major reassessment of all this. And that's why the effort that I spent on is recognizing this. And when I did the presidential races, I was so impressed with so many young people on college campuses that were open to this libertarian message. And even when I would argue, I said, in this system, there wouldn't be an income tax, there wouldn't be any inflation, but the one thing that you have to realize is you can keep what you earn, and I thought the thing that they would be hung up on I said, but then you have all this freedom. It's very good and very prosperous, but if you take your freedom and you squander it, or you make a mistake, or there's some problem, you can't go to the government. And they cheered on that as much as the message. The young people wanted to hear the message, but they wanted to at least hear it, and they were willing to accept it, because right now, that would be a wonderful choice to have. That all I have to do, because quite frankly, the answer to who's going to take the people in need. Well, did the government take care of all the people who just suffered from the hurricane? No, a lot of private services went in there and did a whole lot of things. So no, it would be taken care of. The country would be wealthier. Employment would be better. You wouldn't have the inflationary tax. So I don't think there's any downside to arguing the case for liberty.
Right. More wealth in the country, more people, neighbors being able to help neighbors, the growth of the economy, and removing this debt burden. You've heard President Trump talk about, he's at least floated the idea of eliminating the federal income tax, which sort of sent a shockwave through the internet. I don't know if he's going to stick to that or not, but when he sent that kind of shockwave, it was, I know you've been advocating for that. Do you think that there's any hope that President Trump would actually do that, eliminate the income tax?
He might try, but that's not going to happen. Because if they didn't have the income tax, it would be just so disruptive. But I would do it. But they're not going to do it because too many people would be hurt, especially the special interests, the military-industrial complex. What would you do if you didn't have income tax for the government to pass out all these favors? So it's not going to happen, and it should have never been put in place. And I think the income tax, as well as the conscription for military, is an indication that is a slavery type issue. It's involuntary servitude, because if you accept this income tax even a little bit, even $1, that means the government owns your income, and owns your efforts, and then the government tells you what you can keep, and it is too big, and just the hint of that would drive people crazy, because the real decisions made in Washington come from a band of people who have financial control. Just think of who was it behind getting Biden to drop out of the race. It was the special interests that picked out some powerful Democratic incumbents to go there and tell him he had to leave. So there's a lot, and those were the moneyed interests. There would be bankers and military people and the whole work. So no, I think we should talk about it. I think I like to talk about it, mainly to make it a moral issue and show that it is a tax, and the poor people suffer the most. So they care about social discourse. And the problems that we have now, they have to get rid of this income tax, but you have to get rid of the incentive for big government, and that's where the problem is.
Right. The massive military-industrial complex, the biopharmaceutical complex, all of them that rely on this federal income tax as these favors, the sort of money laundering scheme. But I agree with you. I think it is a form of modern-day slavery. We don't talk about it in those moral terms. I think if more people understood that, and the same people that support the expansion of government that have been lied to for so many years, we could really make some headway. You know, Dr. Paul, I'll get you out of here on this, which is you mentioned kind of multiple times as we've been talking that there's really no coming back from this $36 trillion debt, that it's going to collapse. Is that your position, that we see the rise of BRICS, we see these countries now abandoning the U.S. dollar, we're really seeing the collapse of the Bretton Woods agreements from many, many years ago, and really this sort of repositioning of the international order right now, this new world order where these countries, these BRICS currency countries, are saying we're done being sort of bullied by the IMF, the World Bank, the U.S. dollar as the reserve currency. We're going to go our own way. Do you think it's inevitable that the U.S. dollar collapses and is no longer the world's reserve currency?
To one degree, but I don't know if that would eliminate the concept of a dollar. The British went broke and they lost the reserve status, but there's still a pound, floating around, getting into mischief. So it wouldn't do it. But the dollar's position in the world today as the kingpin and the central, the monetary, the money of the world, that will end. But the $35 trillion, we have to deal with it. But it will be liquidated, so we don't have to worry about it. We're in the process of liquidating it right now because the dollar is always worth less and less. But think of it, if the government owns $35 trillion and you reduce the value of the currency by 20%, the debt goes down by 20%, because the dollars you pay it back with. And that's why some people like to borrow money long term and then pay back the mortgages, with cheaper money. So the liquidation is going on right now, and the government benefits from this because real debt actually goes down. But one way or the other, it'll be liquidated. I'm just arguing that it won't be liquidated by taxing people and taking more money from them and start paying it off. That's not going to happen. But that's why what is important is, what are you going to do about it? How are you going to compete? Are you going to have a sound money? And the encouraging thing is, I don't think our country is given any serious consideration to it, but a lot of other countries, these BRICS and other people, are talking about using gold. Not the gold standard that I might design, but at least they're introducing that idea. But they're going to have to check with Bernanke, because when I ask him, I says, "Is gold money?" And he says it's not money. So, but I said, "What are you going to do? Reverse history? 6,000 years of history, it's been money." So no, the market will take care of it. The market is demanding it already. There is a liquidation going on, but it's a terrible price to pay. And the worst part is the conflict between economic groups, the rich and the poor versus the poor. And right now, the propaganda is controlled by the rich, and therefore they stir up trouble, so that the poor just demands more and more of the system that caused all the trouble. Like I said, they don't have enough money. Give me more money so I can pay my bills. And that's putting gasoline on the fire.
I know I said I'd get you out of here a second ago. I just got to ask you about the election here before we go. What do you think we are going to see over the next few months? Election day just a few days away. And then all the months before we have an inauguration, what is your sense about being around Washington, D.C., of course, your son in the Senate, Rand Paul? What do you see is going to happen over the next few months?
Well, it's hard to say, and I don't go out on a limb on talking about this, but the environment is very rocky because it depends on what the result of the election is. I think the polls that show that Trump is going to win, I believe in them. But what if the rigging is even more than last go around? I mean, there could be a lot of political discourse with that, and I wouldn't be surprised about that. But I'm not predicting that at the end of the month the streets will be all in riots. But they have been pretty rocky here the last couple of years anyway. And we've had this episode of the COVID crisis and that sort of thing. So I wouldn't be surprised if you have this, because if Trump wins, like most people think, the opposition is still in charge of a lot of things, and they are going to do something, whatever they can, to make the incoming president as miserable as they possibly can. And there may be some, I wouldn't be surprised about, some distractions, some real crises, more epidemics, more wars. Maybe the the war that is expanding, always trying to expand, in Ukraine. Now the Koreans are in Russia. What are we going to do about it? So there's all this room for just expanding the crisis, and the people would say, well, this isn't the time to cut the spending. This is the time for us to tighten our belt and get ready for the big war. And that's what, obviously, we're trying to prevent.
Such a smart point. Yes, those people, even if Trump wins, are still in charge. And they made life miserable for him after he won the last time. And the outgoing Obama administration basically sabotaged. I mean, even talking about offices and computers and everything in the executive branch, it was an absolute disaster. It's probably going to be much worse this time. Dr. Paul, great to see you as always. And I encourage people to check out all of your work. And by the way, read your book. Everyone should read your book on ending the Fed. Just such an important discussion to be having right now as we barrel towards the disaster of the U.S. dollar decline right now. Dr. Paul, great to see you as always. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Nice to be with you.
Most guys think their testosterone is being drained by aging, bad genetics, or maybe even a lack of exercise. But what if I told you that's not the case at all? In fact, the real culprit is something you're likely eating every day. And here's the shocking part. It's something you've always been told is healthy. Yes, they are lying to you. This one food has been scientifically shown to devastate testosterone levels. And most men have no idea they're eating it. It's not junk food either. It's not sugar. It's something way more unexpected. And just eating it a few times a week is enough to wreck your testosterone, drain your energy, and crush your motivation. But here's the good news. Cutting this one thing out of your diet could completely transform the way you feel. And our friends at V-Shred have seen it firsthand with their clients. And guys who stopped eating it are building muscle, burning fat, feeling more energized than they have in years. It's truly incredible how quickly things can change once you know what to avoid. And V-Shred, the team behind the cutting-edge fitness and nutrition strategies, has created a video that reveals exactly what this testosterone-killing food is and why removing it from your diet could be the key to unlocking your body's true potential. So if you want to know what this food is, head over to sculptnation.com/redacted. It's right here on your screen. Sculptnation.com/redacted. Watch the video or just click the link below in the description box. V-Shred's experts break it all down, and this one simple change could make all the difference. Trust me, this is the one thing you don't want to miss.